Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an airline pilot, and in this video I'm going to show you how to power up the Antonov 225 and how to start up its engines. We're going to follow the official procedure from IndyBuilds in the product manual, which you can download from the IndyBuilds forums. So, the first thing for us to do is to head right onto the captain's seat and connect the ground power if we desire to use one. The airplane is equipped with 2 APUs as well, which we are going to use in the process of this tutorial, but for this video we are going to use ground power as well. So, let's go to the ground tab, connect the GPU, and for the sake of it we are also going to use the chocks on this one. Next up, make sure the parking brake is set as it is in the configuration over here. This is released, this is parking brake set. Okay, from here we are going to head to the flight engineer station, and before we are going to start, let's have a very quick overview of the most important panels that we have on this station. If we start on the left hand side up here, we have the hydraulics panel, which is basically the entire thing up here. On the bottom, we have the engine start panel, which is basically the one beyond the guarded panel down here. Going on, we have our fuel panel, we have our engine panel, and then on the right hand side, we have our electrical panel. So these are the most important panels, and of course, we have the APU located up here. Going to the other side of the flight deck, we have the navigator station, which we can find over here, where we have a lot of stuff like the VORs, we have all this lovely stuff. But we're going to treat that in a later video. So, let's go ahead and start up our aircraft. In order to start the airplane up, the first thing we need to do is to put the batteries on auto. The batteries are the 5 switches that we see up here. So, put them to the top position, and notice the lights going out. And with the batteries on, we can also connect the ground power unit, which is the little switch we have up here. Note the green light that illuminates with the ground power feeding the buses, and also note the green lines that you see on the panel up here. Okay, then let's go ahead and start up the APUs. The APU panel is located up here. And basically what we have to do is the following. Make sure that the APU fuel heaters are turned off. That's the 2 black buttons we have over here. And then we go ahead, turn the fire loop on, turn the APU master switch on, and then we can press the APU starter. We can do the same on the other side as well. Watch the RPM of the APU as it starts up on the panel up here, and also find the EGTs of the APU up here. As we have 2 APUs installed in the airplane, we have 2 EGT gauges and we have 2 needles on the RPM gauge. Both APUs can operate independently of one another, however, it is standard procedure to use both at the same time. It takes a little bit of time for the APU to start up, but once the RPM needles reach the 100% position, we can continue with our procedures. Okay, that's APU number 1 at 100, and that is APU number 2 at 100. Note the 2 amber lights we have down here, those can be disregarded. Close the APU starters and open the APU bleed air valves. Note that if you have to shut the APU down at any point, you have the buttons located over here. So with the APU now online, let's go ahead and bring the APU generators online, and then we do the rest of the system setup. So we go back to the right side of the flight engineers panel and press those 2 buttons which bring the APU generators online. Once that is done, we can turn the rectifiers and the transformer rectifiers on, which we find on the panel up here, and finally on the left side up here. With every of those being turned on, note the green lights illuminating on the panel, indicating to you that the system is actually operative. Once that is complete, we have established electrical power to our Antonov 225. Let's go ahead now to the Navigators panel and start switching on some systems. And as I'm switching the systems on with the switches up here, note how gradually everything is coming to life. Okay, now it is a little bit surprising, but the Ukrainians have actually built quite a couple more on switches into this airplane than what I deem necessary, but we continue on the overhead panel for the captain, switching all of these on. Then we go over to the right hand side, switching the navigation light on, and finally we have a couple more switches on the FO side that we are also going to switch on. So, with all of these switches set on, the electrical power-up procedure is complete, so we can now go ahead and do the basic system setup. For those, we basically are looking over here at the fuel panel and at the hydraulics panel. We're going to start off on the fuel panel, and there is a little scheme in the manual which basically says configure the system as below. Now, if you are starting with the cold and dark panel state, then you will have the system in an almost correct configuration. Basically, what we need to do is switch this one off, and this one. So what you can remember is on the leftmost panel, the third row of switches needs to be blank, and on the middle and the right side panel, the leftmost needs to be blank, and the other switches don't need any touching if you load it up from the cold and dark state, because then they will already be in the correct configuration. If we move on to the left hand side, we have the hydraulics panel, and on here we basically turn the engine driven hydraulic pumps off. We find those underneath the guarded switches up here, and when we press them, note how the switch just comes out, and then we can guard them once again. And we do this with all of the engine's hydraulic pump switches. Okay, with that our hydraulics are also set up, so we can start up the engines. Now, that was quite easy, wasn't it? Okay, let's go on. Now, for the purpose of the video, at the moment I'm recording this, GSX is currently not compatible with the AN225, so we are stuck on the stand and have to taxi out ourselves later on. So I'm going to start up the engines on the stand, and then later on we'll just taxi out from here. Hopefully GSX is going to be updated soon to support the AN225 so that we can do a proper pushback. Alright, before we start the engine start procedure, make sure the parking brake is set, and then let's go ahead and remove the ground power unit and the chocks. So let's quickly head over to the Art Engineers panel, find the ground power switch over here, and switch that off. With the ground power turned off, we can disconnect GPU and chocks, and now it's time to start up the engines. So, turn on the beacon light, which is the light we find over here. And then we head over to the engineers panel once more, while quickly checking that all the fuel levers we have up here are actually in the up and guarded position like they are by the default cold and dark panel state. Open up the covering of the engine start panel. Make sure that all the engine start mode switches are set to rich in the upper position, which they are by default. And basically the default panel configuration already works quite well, and you don't need to do much on it. So with the system set up like this, we head over to the hydraulic panel, turn on the center pump, make sure that the green hydraulic lines illuminate, and then we can switch them off again. This is just a quick system check to make sure that these are working. Then we head over to the overhead panel and to the panel up here and turn on the FADEC for our 6 engines. So this is the FADEC turned on, and now we can basically do an automatic startup of the engines. The airplane has this capability, and in order to do that, we are going to switch the auto start button on. Observe the green indication, and then we hold the auto start button for 3 seconds. Oh, excuse myself, hold the start buttons for 3 seconds. So, 1, 2, 3, launch in progress, and now the engine start has begun. You can see the engine slowly starting up over here, and this is going to take a little bit of time. While the engines start up, be sure to be prepared for cutting off the mixture with the mixture ratio switches as applicable. So engine number 1 is starting, so we're unguarding this so that we can turn it off at any moment we need to. Number 1 is starting, number 6 is starting, so let's prepare this one as well. And the engines take a lot of time, so the startup is going to take several minutes up here, and we are going to wait now while the engines actually start up. So that is engine number 2 starting. Engine number 5 starting. The reason we are unguarding those switches during the engine startup process is that we can kill the engines off immediately should we have to. So we've got light up on the number 1 engine, light up on the number 6 engine. The entire engine start process is going to take a little while, so what I'm going to do for making this video a little bit shorter for you is in a few moments I will turn a bit of time acceleration on so that we can watch the remainder of the engine start. But while the engine starts up, let me quickly talk you through the rest of the procedure as we're going to execute it. As soon as the engine number 1 is in a stabilized condition, we're going to turn on the hydraulic pump of engine number 1 and observe positive pressure on the system. And the same will go for the remainder of the engines as they start up. So that is engine number 1, almost stable. And roughly at 55%, number 1 is stable. Okay, so engine number 1, hydraulic pump on. And with the hydraulic pump turned on, we're going to see indications right here on the panel. Okay, the same is going to apply for the remainder of the engines as they start up. So I'm just going to fast forward a little bit right now, and I see you again when the engines are running entirely. Now that our startup procedure is complete, we can continue with our procedure. So, once the engines are started, we are going to cover the switches again and close the engine start panel. Make sure that you've turned all the hydraulic pumps on so that you actually see the on indications over here. And then we go to the back of the panel where we're going to switch the engine generators on, which you can find down here. And we do this for all 4 generators that we have. Once the engine generators are switched on, the engine start procedure is complete, and we can continue with the after start procedure. For the after start procedure, switch off the APUs by pressing the APU stop buttons here and here, and now we'll see how the APU slowly starts shutting down. Now, I am once again going to use a little bit of time acceleration here in order to make things go a little bit faster. So we're watching the APU needles as they move all the way down, and once the APU is shut down, we continue with our procedure. Now, if you want to make things a little bit faster later on, you can probably just continue on the procedures on the captain's seat while the APU shuts down. Just remember to actually shut the APU down properly once you're done with that. So, with the APU now shut down, we can select the APU fire loops number 1 and 2 off, the APU master switch off and guarded, and then we can turn off the APU bleed. Once that is completed, we can take a seat on the captain's seat and won't have to touch the engineer's panel for a few moments. Oh, back on the captain's seat, we are going to select flaps 2 down here. We're going to arm the spoilers, which basically means moving them into the up position. And then we are going to arm the thrust reversers, basically by scrolling on the thrust reverser lever. And this basically arms our thrust reversers. Now let's go ahead and conduct the flight control check. That's gonna go full up. Notice how the indicators are moving over here as well. Full left and full right. Notice the spoilers moving as well. Neutral. And finally the rudder. And you will notice that we have 2 indicators up here for the rudder that are moving. And that is actually normal because if you look at the airplane, the thing has 2 rudders. Okay. Finally, when the flight control check is complete, make sure that your trims are set to neutral. You have the aileron trim here and the rudder trim here, and you have the indicators down here and down here. And we want to make sure that the red arrows are actually indicated on the white line, which means that they are in neutral. Finally, make sure that both nose wheel steering switches are on. You can find them down here. And that completes the after start procedure. From here on, we're going to turn on the taxi lights and the logo lights if it's night, and then we can start our taxi towards the runway. That shall conclude this video. Next up, I'm going to show you the takeoff procedure, but that will be a topic for a separate video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope that you have learned something today, and if you want to support the channel, you can do so through the Buy Me a Coffee link in the video description below, or by becoming a channel member, which is going to give you exclusive early access to new videos, as well as in First Class membership the ability to request your own custom videos. Thank you very much for watching, and I'm looking forward to see you all again very soon.